Welcome. I'm very excited to be here. This is a great topic that I think is very important, and they're excellent talks. Tonight, I'm going to talk about the work of Alliance for Response and its partners in recovery efforts within the New York cultural heritage community during and after Hurricane Sandy, and how lessons learned during Sandy have ushered efforts to better protect our cultural holdings from similar events as they become more frequent with ongoing climate change. The New York City chapter of Alliance for Response was formed in 2004 and has a current membership of over 400 individuals representing nonprofit organizations, businesses, public agencies, and other institutions interested in preserving our city's cultural heritage. As you may be aware, this heritage preservation initiative was developed to ensure that relationships between first responders and the cultural heritage community are built in advance, so that one can quickly reach out to partners if needed rather than searching for expertise in the middle of an event. Our chapter has also focused heavily on creating programming that brings our members the resources they need to establish their own disaster plans and policies. Alliance for Response New York City acts as a conduit for critical information between its membership and a network of local and national partners operating in cultural heritage and related sectors. I think it's the next slide, actually. Yes, thank you. These relationships fortify AFR's ability to support disaster preparedness and response. Prior to Sandy, AFR already had relationships in place with several key partners, including the New York City Office of Emergency Management, through its public and private initiatives programs. AFR continues to have a seat at the OEM Emergency Operations Center, as well as a direct line to staff in the days preceding, during, and following an event. As we all remember, Sandy's storm surge hit New York City on October 29th, flooding streets, tunnels, and subway lines and cutting power in and around the city. Surging water poured into the basements of galleries, artist studios, and first-floor exhibit spaces in Manhattan's Gallery District and Brooklyn's Riverside Artist Studios, damaging tens of thousands of artworks. The image on the left shows cars floating in the Chelsea Gallery District at the peak of the storm, and on the right, the inside of the Gosser-Grunig Gallery is shown after the storm. Some more examples. The image on the left shows staff sweeping water out of the Gagosian Gallery on West 21st Street, where a Henry Moore sculpture show was partially installed. And on the right, wet Carl Andre plates are oxidizing as they dry on the sidewalk in front of the Paula Cooper Gallery. Like more traditional cultural heritage institutions such as museums and libraries and historic sites, the artists and galleries are an integral part of the cultural heritage in New York, and as such, they became the focus of our efforts. Because of the existing relationships between AFR and OEM, our steering committee members participated in private sector updates leading up to and during the hurricane. OEM notifications were passed on to the AFR membership throughout Sandy, reminding members to utilize the social media that OEM maintains for real-time updates. The information was enormously valuable for institutions making decisions about how to manage employees, whether to close museums, or needs for dismantling or tying down exterior repair equipment. During the storm, AFR also began assisting colleagues who were seeing their own institutions affected. The Noguchi Museum in Long Island City is an example. Long Island City lies in what used to be known as Zone A and now Zone 2, meaning that there is potential for flooding from any hurricane. The museum is less than 1 block from the East River, and the East River poured into the museum's storage area, flooding several hundred works, including sculptures made of wood, metal, stone, and plaster. In search of pumps, the director of administration at the museum reached out to AFR and was put in touch with OEM. OEM connected her with a contact at the General Services Administration who could supply the equipment she needed. AFR also provided many hours of on-site volunteer assistance. Because of the network already in place, salvage activities began with only a few hours of the storm waters receding. Other groups quickly stepped up to the plate in the immediate days following the storm, most critically the American Institute for Conservation and Collections Emergency Response Team, which operates nationally and even internationally to support cultural institutions in emergencies, providing guidance, referrals, and in some cases, on-site recovery assistance. AIC CERT was particularly instrumental in disseminating information through a local symposium, through their hotline, and through volunteers who came to New York. Local groups also contributed expertise to their existing professional and academic relationships. Members of the New York Regional Association for Conservation and its subgroup, the Emerging Professionals in Conservation, provided conservation support to affected organizations. These groups recruited some of the first volunteers to publicize training opportunities and work alongside AIC CERT responders. Their observations of conditions throughout the city furnished an early picture of the challenges that response effort would face. And finally, there was staff and financial support from various institutions, particularly the Smithsonian, the Museum of Modern Art, and the American Museum of Natural History. A local ad hoc committee with representation from all of these groups, as well as AFR, emerged to coordinate response and recovery and support AIC CERT efforts. MoMA emerged as a hub for this community to meet, plan, and push immediate disaster recovery resources to local constituents through various platforms. Within days of Sandy's landfall, MoMA hosted a consortium on the recovery of flood-damaged works of art, organized by our local response committee with the encouragement of AIC CERT. The program was designed to convey practical advice and training directly to members of the cultural heritage community. However, in trying to publicize this consortium, we discovered that AFR and its partners lacked a pre-existing contact list for New York City cultural institutions. We distributed announcements through a list of email addresses for Chelsea galleries pulled together from online gallery guides. But power outages and disrupted cellular networks made it necessary for volunteers to set out on foot, literally going door to door throughout Chelsea and Brooklyn. The consortium program pulled in approximately 200 total attendees and was so well received that a second session was spontaneously arranged later in that day. MoMA also hosted a page on their website called Hurricane Sandy Conservation Resources. The page listed guidelines for immediate response and recovery, links to relevant agencies and organizations, and information about free webinars, seminars, recovery workshops, and funding resources and salvage supplies. A streaming video of the consortium was posted, extending its reach, and a link to MoMA's blog, Inside Out, directed users to a series of posts in which AIC CERT conservators offered tips for dealing with wet artifacts. The page also hosted announcements for important local developments, such as the opening of the Cultural Recovery Center in Brooklyn. Potential funders and representatives from the press sought details about the breadth of damage and needs within the community. Using SurveyMonkey, a free online survey tool, we designed an online needs assessment tool and distributed it to consortium attendees, Chelsea galleries, and others, capturing detailed contact information, the type and extent of collections affected, and any actions taken to date. This data became essential for planning and prioritizing response activities. Large numbers of volunteers, some of you may be in the audience, including conservators and conservation students, came forward offering assistance. To build and successfully utilize this pool of volunteers, we developed a recruitment survey and a simple database to capture information about professional skill sets, availability, disaster recovery expertise, and it was disseminated widely by AFR and its partners, pulling in over 125 respondents, including conservators, art handlers, artists, and other collections care specialists. Through AIC CERT, a volunteer coordinator position was established to put them to work in support of AIC CERT team members working locally. AIC CERT spearheaded the efforts to establish a cultural recovery center, a triage space where artists could work with AIC CERT responders to stabilize affected works. Our local ad hoc committee, along with volunteers from AIC CERT, worked closely with the Department of Cultural Affairs to identify and evaluate potential sites for the CRC, eventually settling on a warehouse in Brooklyn that was large enough to accommodate an unknown number of artworks. The CRC was furnished almost entirely with donations from Materials for the Arts, a city organization that collects unneeded items from businesses and individuals and makes them available to organizations offering arts programming. A system of clean spaces was designed in consultation with art storage and handling firm Surround Art and implemented with the help of James Gilbert of Rapid Refile. The CRC opened on December 10th in Industry City in Brooklyn and remained open for 3 months, serving 25 individuals and over 3,000 works of art. While our experience during and after Sandy offered a vivid demonstration of how local groups can join forces for a more effective disaster response, they also presented several important lessons. With its high concentration of diverse organizations, the New York cultural heritage community represents a unique set of needs and vulnerabilities. Among them, small nonprofits, galleries, and artists are our largest area of need in New York City. Most had little or no insurance, no disaster plans, and very limited resources. It's an essential for an effective disaster response organization to know its constituents and their needs. And this leads to the next lesson. Better tools were needed to understand and document our community. A database of our constituents and volunteers would better facilitate disaster response. And until Sandy, AFR saw itself as a preparedness and informational resource and was not prepared to deploy a local response team. After Sandy, it was clear that AFR's mission called for clarification and expansion. AFR itself had no response plan in place. The development of a plan that outlines communications, defines roles, and lays out protocols for use of material, financial, and human resources was critical. A disaster response organization can't wait until an event occurs to develop informational resources or pull together content for a training session, symposium, or blog post. Information that supports recovery needs to exist in preparation for a disaster so that it can be pushed to constituents as soon as possible. Hurricane Sandy was a storm of devastating magnitude with surge the likes of which most people never imagined or believed could happen. We've learned our lesson, and we are going to be better prepared for the next time. During Sandy response and salvage activities, the New York Community Trust provided support to AFR through heritage preservation by providing funds to procure supplies and equipment. With additional generous funding from New York Community Trust, a 2-year initiative is underway to develop key tools within AFR to better protect our community's cultural holdings from similar events in the future. Funding is provided for the development of an emergency response plan for AFR and the establishment of a local emergency response team, some of whom are in the audience, to serve cultural institutions affected by disasters. Funding also supports the development of an infrastructure to better manage outreach and emergency communication within the New York cultural community. AFR's Heritage Response Team is modeled on AIC CERT and will operate through coordinated efforts with first responders, city and state agencies, vendors, and the public. 50 volunteers will be trained to provide advice by phone and email, and in some cases, on-site assistance. The first HRT training series will kick off this Saturday at MoMA and will continue for 7 sessions. Topics covered will range from the incident command system and working with first responders to health and safety and collection-specific salvage. A final training session in the spring of 2015 will include a hands-on disaster scenario. The program will greatly increase New York City's cadre of conservators and other collection support staff trained in emergency salvage. With New York Community Trust support, AFR is making concurrent improvements to its digital infrastructure in order to better disseminate information about emergency management resources and programs, communicate news and emergency updates, and support deployment of the HRT. AFR's new website, www.afrnyc.org, was launched this spring. It includes extensive information pertaining to disaster mitigation and preparedness, response and recovery, and health and safety. Additional sections are devoted to news and past AFR events. Individuals can sign up online and manage their member profiles and contact preferences through a membership portal. Future development of the membership portal will deliver expanded profile options and tools to assist the user in supplying basic facts to emergency responders when needed. We are now using social media as a conduit for sharing news and announcements and passing along updates from partner organizations such as OEM, and we encourage you to note our Facebook page and Twitter handles and follow AFRNYC. And more is yet to come. In the future, these tools will be complemented by a purpose-built disaster response case management application, which would forge a powerful link between AFR's membership and the HRT. Members affected by an event will be able to request assistance through a variety of messaging platforms. The application will permit Heritage Response Team volunteers to track project progress and manage all communication related to a particular case. Eventually, GIS mapping capabilities will allow the display of data about the geographical distribution and specific needs of our constituency, and also assist the HRT volunteers in reaching their worksite. And we're hopeful that an initial version of this application will roll out as soon as this winter. The disaster response tool has the potential to play a large role in developing effective sustainability practices for a group. By creating an efficient mode of communication, we can encourage membership participation and provide them with a platform to share details about other needs they perceive in disaster preparedness, response, or recovery. By striving for a well-informed and active membership, we can encourage our members to get involved, contribute to, and benefit from AFR's work. We are also currently taking the necessary steps to grow from a 100% volunteer group to an organized nonprofit corporation, which would give us the ability to accept funding to expand our services to our members. Additional resources could allow us to develop more active programming, which would be based on direct feedback from our membership. Before, during, and after Hurricane Sandy, AFR was a key player in the creation of partnerships to assist in recovery. Our participation in outreach projects, needs assessments, and establishment of the AIC CERT Cultural Recovery Center led to the creative and effective support for affected institutions and artists. Through these efforts, we attained a better understanding of how we can strengthen our assistance to the New York City cultural community as we prepare for subsequent disasters. Over 200 New York area museums, libraries, archives, and approximately 500 performing arts organizations and nonprofit galleries will benefit in future emergencies by our better understanding their needs in advance and training responders to assist them following a disaster. But the impact of this program will be wider still. Heritage Preservation's Alliance for Response program grows stronger through the efforts of each of its chapters. As a model for other regions and states, it's our hope that the outcomes of this project will benefit cultural communities not only in New York City, but across the nation. And here's a list of some of the many, many people who helped during Hurricane Sandy to support those affected. Thank you.